You're listening to the Slavic Literature Pod, your shelf help guide to all things Slavic.
I'm Cameron Lalana.
And I'm Matt Gerasimovich.
And today we're covering Part 2, Chapter 3 of Vasily Grossman's Life and Fate with Yevgenia. We've been calling her Zhenya so far, but I've been noticing this book has been living under Yevgenia so much, so she shall be. So going forward, Yevgenia and Novikov finally meet for a rather awkward reunion after the last time they saw each other in the last novel, Stalingrad, right before the evacuation of Stalingrad. Is there anywhere in this little rather awkward reunion that you'd like to begin?
Well, I call her Zhenya still just because we're on pretty informal terms overall.
That's true. We are good friends, so.
We are good friends. We go way back to when we did our Stalingrad read-through. I still am kind of on the fence on what to make of this chapter, all things considered. It was just a very strange one. I think that there are some cases under very difficult circumstances like a war where the stress of it all can really bring people together. And there are some cases where it does not. And this is one of those cases, I think. It is just a very awkward meeting. I think Novikov is expecting Zhenya to be much happier to see him. I think she is to some degree, but she's clearly really, really conflicted over Krimov and feels the need to say lots of things to Novikov about Krimov, not to mention if he ends up crippled or in prison, she says, then I'll go back to him. Just laying it all out for Novikov to make sure he knows how she's feeling. Even going so far as to recount the one article that Krimov had written that Trotsky called pure marble. And this is an important interaction to mark right here, right now.
Right, for sure. Yeah, that one's gonna, if you weren't already aware, I'm sure you already are, having Trotsky praise your work at this point in time in the Soviet Union is not the praise you want, even if it happened years and years ago. That one's a transgression that's going to stick with you.
Well, and nobody knew that he did it, and now it's coming to light.
Yes.
Out of kind of, the desire for prestige or whatever it is.
Right. It's an interesting interaction because we're at this point where, on one level, I mean, I'll say this kind of glibly, Novikov clearly is not paying that much attention to Yevgenia. They're literally understanding each other, but when you go from her point of perspective, which is very broad ranging, it's going to Krimov, it's going to broader issues. He's really focused on like, oh wow, she's just so quiet and humble, and like, wow, I'm so in love. We're going to get married. Well, she's saying to him, just so you know, I will leave you immediately if my ex-husband is like hurt in any way. So there's that level, but also, even though on the front, Novikov is not a member of the party, and when he is in the presence of Getmanov and the other generals who are members of the party, he is the representative of this sort of new age that they don't particularly care for. That where the the soldier is put above the party member, which is of course the world all topsy turvy. And he's the representative of things not correct on the battlefront, but when you come to the home front, he suddenly is the representative in a way. He's now holding the secret that could be the key to Krimov's fate. But and Zhenya doesn't know if she trusts him. So that one, there's that level. But also, I think interestingly, this is the interaction from the chapter that stuck out to me most. You have him recollecting the attack on the Wehrmacht's initial attack on the Soviet Union. And when all the airmen are running to the field, a Polish woman yells out like, "Who's there? Who's going past?" And a young boy says, "It's a Russian soldier." And he expressed this sort of chauvinistic, like, "Yeah, I am a Russian soldier." And before the war, we were taught not to think that way, but now things are different. I was so proud to be Russian soul, and like all this kind of isn't Russian is special, which of course not true, not what Soviet socialism is supposed to be, but as you're seeing throughout this novel, is something this Soviet sort of Russian chauvinism is. Present throughout the forces, right? And as soon as he says that, Yevgenia kind of has this non sequitur response, which is, "Oh, do you know this apartment?" This woman, Jenny, she's a German woman, and she brought me in. She gives us, to this place, and I think there's no kinder woman in the city. Isn't that odd in this particular time, in this particular war? And then, Novikov says, whatever the reason is, he says, hey, well, is she going to be back soon? And Zhenya says, no, she's been deported, likely to her death. And then Novikov's response is, thank God for that. He's fully engaging. He's not the party, but now on the home front, he's sort of this representative of this. I don't know exactly what to call it of the party, but he is sort of the forefront of this sort of the chauvinism, right? Where, oh, well, there's no place for kindness. Well, she's a German. Thank God she's been deported to her death kind of reaction, which is you can see from Zhenya's inner world here, which is not quite certain, but really far from it's far from Novikov's perspective.
I just think the whole thing is hilarious. Basically, she's trying to give him lead-ins to things that are clearly important to her. And the narrator keeps reminding us that, well, once he finally stopped paying attention to what they were both saying, he really was feeling pretty good about himself. There's just like several of those in the chapter, and just his daydreams about after the war with his house and his garden. And it just doesn't really compute for Zhenya with where she's at. And she says, I've only just realized I don't know you at all. You're a stranger. I mean it. What's all this about a house and a garden? Are you being serious? And Novikov doesn't really have a good response for this, but I think there is still this chasm that has opened between the two, and that is not really it's not really going to be closed. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Well, if you want to come to the if you want to come to the Slavic Literature Pod School of Relationships, our tip number 1 is pay attention to what your significant other is saying, and generally try to respond to that, and that'll do pretty good for you.
That will do pretty good.
Right.
Don't give out all of our course tips, please.
Okay, you're right.
We have a $600 course you can buy in Gumroad.
You're right. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that when we start putting out more information about that. But for now, I think that's all I wanted to cover. Is there anything else for you?
No, I think I am good, which means that you will be hearing from us again soon.